Namaste and welcome. Clear from the thumbnail, we are going to discuss about the temples of Bharat today. Why, how, what is to be discussed, we'll be dealing with it later. But first of all, let us go with the flow of the video. What is going to be the flow of the video? Firstly, I'll bring to you all the story of AMRAVATI. Then the story of Puducherry will follow, followed by story of Lord Curzon, then followed by story of Mahabalipuram, story of Coimbatore, story of Metropolitan Museum of New York, story of Mount Abu Rajasthan, story of Nalanda Buddha, story of a book, story of Robin Symes, and then lastly, a ray of hope that shines bright for us. By now, all of you must be wondering about what is so interesting and what is so important about the temples that we are going to discuss about it now. I assure you all that with these stories that we are going to discuss now, we'll come to realize of the importance that should be given to the temples in our day-to-day lives. Not just about them being a religious place, but also because of them being an institution. So let's start with the story of Amravati. Well, it won't really strike you if I say that Amravati was a Buddhist site in 3rd century BC, because we all know that India has a Buddhist history, right? What will strike you rather is the fact that there were carvings of limestones which are now in 3 different museums across this world, one in Kolkata, one in Chennai, and the other one in, guess what, Britain. But that's not it. The artifacts found over there were kept in open and carefree for about 8 years before they were kept properly in these museums. That's the level of institutionalization of archaeological things that we have today in our country. The worst part, people today in India aren't even aware that Amravati was a Buddhist site. Well, okay, we are done with the story of Amravati. Now let's come to the story of Puducherry. So you must be wondering, what story of a temple do we have from Puducherry? Here is an interesting one. During the British rule in Bharat, in Puducherry, a statue of Lord Vishnu was unearthed and discovered. The then Viceroy of Bharat, Lord Curzon, organized an auction and bought it. Well, I leave it up to you to guess whether or not a local would have dared to stand against the Viceroy of Bharat and bought the statue in any imaginable circumstance. But that was not the only thing Lord Curzon did. Again, a bronze Kongu from Coimbatore was unearthed and bequeathed. But this time, Lord Curzon again, guess what, organized an auction and bought it from the locals. At least that is what we have said. He bought those artifacts. With this, we are done with the story of Puducherry. Now let's come on to the story of Ganesh Ratha, Mahabalipuram. This would be even more heartbreaking. From our initial history courses, we all know that Mahabalipuram was once ruled by the Pallava dynasty. Pallava dynasty were the ardent followers of Lord Shiva. Then how come they had a Ganesh Ratha at Mahabalipuram? It turns out that during the British rule, the first collector of the state took the first Shivalingam of the temple. The second collector followed, taking the Nandi away that was in front of the Shivalingam. The villagers then, very disappointed, installed the statue of Lord Ganesha over there in the temple. Hence, today we know of it as the Ganesh Ratham. But actually, it was a Shiva temple. The most unfortunate part of all this is that no one today is even aware that there was a Shiva temple over there in Mahabalipuram. We are done with this story now. Now let's move to the story of Tranquebar or Tarangambadi. Well, what story of a temple took place over there? Turns out that Peter Anker was a Dutch collector. He found a bronze sculpture which obviously belonged to the Masilamani Nathar temple, told the locals that these have actually lost powers and are of no use, and then he took away those sculptures. But there seems to be a twist. It seems that he was not the one who took the sculptures from the locals. It was the prince, because unfortunately Peter Anker went through financial difficulty. Now the narrative being propagated is that Peter Anker bought it from the locals and the king bought it from Peter Anker, while the original sources claim something else. Peter Anker actually bought it against a bag of rice from the villagers, and the villagers in return gave him betel nuts. I would leave it on you to decide how fair of a purchase was it in those days. Actually, this is how important artifacts from our culture were bought, and this is how bad the situation was. Unfortunately, the history, however, is being twisted. Now let's come to the story of the Metropolitan Museum of New York. Well, this is a huge one. The museum houses a 15 feet seated enthroned Lord Vishnu, bought from a person in Chennai in, guess what, 1968. Yeah, post-independence, from a Pandya museum. At that time, Bharat already had export permit rules in place, but still the Metropolitan Museum displays that artifact without any shame. Why I brought shame in place? Because it was actually theft. The people who sold it were charged with idols and antiquity smuggling in 1980s. They were the Narang brothers. This was the story of smuggling. Let's give another example. A statue of Nataraj was caught by customs in 1967 at the port of Kolkata. Guess what? This shipment was for the Nepali royal family. None were punished, no one was inquired. The statue was only simply kept in the Indian National Museum of Kolkata, thus shutting down the case not to be opened again, so that no one knows how and by whom was it at the first place transported from Chennai to Kolkata. Now the person you see on screen is a Bharatiya person, is an Indian. But guess what? Post 1947, he was the curator of different museums in USA and European countries, and he pushed the millionaires of those countries to purchase the finest of the Bharatiya artwork for the museums which were located there. This was looting on an industrial scale. Okay, now let's come to the story of Mount Abu, Rajasthan. It is really sad and heartbreaking to inform that there are actually no original Jain Tirthankars in Rajasthan Mount Abu, which was actually the hub of Jainism, simply because each of the original Tirthankars were first just smuggled and then sold out. Well, this process isn't really so rare. I mean, we all can see even prestigious educational and research institutions in the USA hold these artifacts of ours. Take CERN for example. You may see a Nataraja statue just outside of CERN. It is smuggled and taken. Anyways, let's come back to the story of the book that we told in the beginning. Peter Watson, in his book Sotheby's Inside Story in 1988, had a chapter on Bharat where he goes on to describe how these smugglers actually operate, traffic the sculptures and the statues of the deities and then smuggle it. The world has changed, and so has the methodology to smuggle things. Earlier, these guys used to visit the places, locate and choose the artifacts, best of the artifacts, and then smuggle it. But now, with the advancement of technology, all these stuffs happen on WhatsApp. Now let's come to the last story of Robin Symes. Robin Symes was a European who used to traffic Greek and Italian antiques. He paid rent for the room inside the Swiss Prepod in Geneva for over 30 years. No one opened his room ever, while he was jailed and then bailed in 4 months in 2012. There is one story remaining, however, the story of Nalanda Buddha. It's pretty amazing how the statue of Buddha was looted out of the ASI museum in Nalanda, one of the most sacred Buddhist sites. Once smuggled and looted, it was put on sale in Netherlands after 57 years of being stolen. It was in that auction that it was recovered. Now let's come to the last part of it, the ray of hope that shines. There's a group of people taking forward this task to get back our stolen and smuggled artifacts, deities, and other archaeological sculptures. Some people associated with this organization explained to us how the trafficking and smuggling actually works. They explained that smuggling happens later. First, what happens is trafficking, because trafficking things is easy than smuggling them. Trafficking also helps to wash out the historical and cultural attachment with that particular archaeological artifact. Trafficking also helps to refrain from the judicial fight back from any particular organization which might do so, and hence would prevent smuggling. Therefore, trafficking is the most important part. Once ensured that there would be no legal consequences and no legal fight back, then smuggling follows. Many members of the India Pride project are NRIs. They also inform us that trafficking and smuggling happens mostly through two different ports. One is from Bangkok and the other one is from Hong Kong. Though I have kept my tone down in this video, it doesn't mean that this topic is not very serious. It's very serious and heartbreaking. The deities and the artifacts being stolen and smuggled are worth billions and trillions of dollars. Moreover, it is our cultural, religious and historical belonging. The cause behind the smuggling and trafficking of these artifacts from our temples will be discussed in some other video. For now, the good news is that we have a ray of hope shining bright. This was your host Amit Anand Jha from VVKS.